protest over the bread price that would lead to the fall of a president. An ailing president is forced out of office in what some have described as the second Arab Spring. These are what some people would list as victories emanating from active citizenry, but what's fueling the fury of the African continent? But first, are the VhaVenda ready for a queen? Welcome to Politbureau. I'm Aldrin Simpier. So this past Friday, on the 12th of April, VhaVenda Princess Masindi Mphephu celebrated her birthday. But then another cause for celebration, the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled in favor of her application that her uncle, Toni Mphephu Ramabulana's claim to the throne is unlawful and unconstitutional. The court found that the reasons behind the installation of King Ramabulana promote gender discrimination, but the battle is far from over. Joining me in studio now to discuss the significance of this judgment is former chairwoman of the Commission for Gender Equality and gender activist, Nomboni Sokasa, and Masindi's uncle, Advocate Nyarisani Madao. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let's start with you, Advocate. What was it like when she heard what the court has said?
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you to the viewers and the opportunity to explain this. When Masindi heard about the success from the Supreme Court of Appeal, she was very ecstatic. She was very, very happy because that was what she has always expected. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's quite interesting that it had to go this far. That's the thing, because it started at the High Court, but then had to go all the way to the Supreme Court of Appeal. What was the thinking behind it? Why does she feel that there was a need to further push back?
Masindi has always believed that since she is the only child of the late King Dimbanyika, she is entitled to succeed her father. Mm-hmm. So after the death of her father, her uncle, King Toni Ramabulana, or the then king, as he then was appointed by the Royal Council to take over. Mm-hmm. She was very worried when she became of age, that because she has heard from people that when a father who's a leader or a traditional leader passes on, one of the children must succeed. But with Masindi, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So she was so worried. That's why she decided to mount this fight. So she was not gonna back down even after the Toyando High Court had dismissed the application. She had to fight on until she got to the Supreme Court of Appeal, where the matter was ventilated on the 30th of November last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mam Nomboni Sokasa, thank you so much as well for joining us. Quite an important ruling, and also emphasizing this issue around discrimination based on gender.
Yes, I mean, I think that it's a very important ruling, and I think we are seeing a process whereby we are addressing this issue of succession. It started with Nomita, and I think it's very important that women are contesting this, and it's important that our courts are actually providing clarification. Mm-hmm.
With regards to this issue. One of the strange things that I find in this court judgment is the issue around the customary law and adapting the customary law to the Constitution and making sure that it is in line. And this was based on a constitutional ruling that it should be done progressively. It shouldn't be all at once. Doesn't this make the process a bit slower?
Not really. I think it's also important for us to remember that the court is not dictating what the constitutional, what customary law should be. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that we start from a position that says customary law is dynamic, it's fluid, and it changes over time. I think it's also important to acknowledge the fact that this is one of the second important case relating to VhaVenda customary law, mm-hmm. where in fact the customary law is going to be looked into and look at whether the practices are in keeping in the first place with the customary law of the people, and secondly, whether there are certain changes that have to take place. And I think gradually, and you can only do it that way, because you cannot dictate or on people what kind of changes they should make. So it's interesting, as cases are coming up, gradually we are building a jurisprudence that says that actually informs how we should be moving forward.
Advocate, what then do you make of how the council is set up in deciding who becomes the successor?
Aldrin, if you check the judgment itself, the court had gone at length to try and indicate how it must be done, because if you remember what actually happened when King Toni was appointed, they've applied, there was the royal council, the royal family, and the court was not happy about that arrangement. So remember, the Framework Act prescribes precisely how these processes must unfold. But, that was not what was followed by the Mphephu Ramabulana family when they appointed Toni.
Was there any view from the family, at least from Princess Masindi's side, that there was added pressure, undue pressure, to ensure that King Toni becomes the one who claims the throne?
I wouldn't say there was any pressure that was exerted on Masindi. She was not even considered. They didn't even call her. Masindi just wake up in the morning and hear Toni has been appointed as the king.
And that's the strange thing,
Well, I think this is the problem, because, look, so this is between, in the first instance, a particular community, a particular family, right? But I think it's important for us to also look at the fact that this is beyond, Princess Mphephu and Hoshikulu Mphephu Ramabulana. You have the president of the country gazetting this. You have him proceeding, when it's clear that it's contested, you have him proceeding to confirm that this is, of course he doesn't appoint, but he confirms that this is the king of the... You have the Commission on Traditional Leadership, which is supposed to be neutral. The president, the minister of Kokta, the Commission on Traditional Leadership, all these institutions are supposed to be neutral, but you have them being party to this, to an extent,
for a certain outcome.
For a certain outcome, backing a particular outcome, to an extent that even in confirming installation of King Mphephu Ramabulana, the government doesn't even consult with the other party, and this is actually very problematic, and this is something that needs to be looked into in terms of how political office becomes embedded in some of these issues.
One of the things that the judgment also raised is how the president had argued that the installation of the king was based on recommendation, whereas the old law had said that actually the president doesn't even need a recommendation to recognize who the king is.
Most importantly, it is not his place. It is not the president's place to interfere or to take a particular position when there's contestation. And you cannot tell me that the president didn't know that there's a consequence. If he didn't know, then that is a problem. And I think we need to have a conversation, because it's not only in this case. We need to have a conversation about what is the role of political office. How can political office assist in facilitating some of the conversations and agreements that have to happen.
But here's the quagmire that the Supreme Court throws into the mix of this. You raised the issue around politics not being politics shouldn't be part of this process. But the court then says the second respondent, which in this court application was the president, and the fourth respondent, which is the premier, are directed to refer the following issues of customary law to the custom of the fifth and the sixth respondents, respectively, for an opinion and advice to be submitted by the higher court. So the court is actually saying that the president and the premier must get involved. These political players must get involved.
Yes, they must get involved, but they must not get involved in support, in the way that they did, in support of one side. right? Because the clarification around customary law, the clarification around how do you adapt, succession, right? It's important. It's important for political office. But what they cannot do is to impose or take a side, which is what they've done.
Advocate Mado, Nomboniso speaks about having taken a side, and I've seen some of the tweets. The tweet where she tweeted the current president, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is of course from the VhaVenda community as well, having taken pictures with the king. Is that a problem? Do you think at all that the president should recuse himself from this matter?
Look, this is not a political matter, but politics will always be involved because there are different interests in matters like this. I think the president can be involved in terms of accepting the recommendation from the Royal Council. That's the only time that I think he must involve, not meddling into the issues and trying to influence the outcome.
But how don't we expect the president not to influence, even by virtue of not saying anything at all, by virtue of having pictures
For example,
that have been taken?
No, that's fine, because at that particular point when those pictures were taken...
But the court process was still underway, and that's the issue.
Well, but on the other hand, King Mphephu was recognized, right? It stood.
At that time.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think what is a problem is where they enjoin, where they become part of one side in court. For example, you could have had Princess Mphephu, and you could have had King Ramabulana, as well as the families that support them, as the main people in the court. And then you could have had the political office as simply assisting the court in terms of clarifying what their role was and their own understanding. In that way, then they wouldn't have to be, they wouldn't be taking any position. I think also it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that, these issues are very political, and I think that it's important for us to accept the fact that, look, there will be political interest in this, but the extent to which they go is where the problem is.
But how do you navigate that? How do you? And for me, my issue about it is, with the current situation, is that you have the president of the country, the #1 citizen, coming from this community.
Yes.
How do you ensure that the president has absolutely no influence whatsoever?
In the first instance, he's not part of the families.
Yes.
Right? That's the first thing. In the first place, in the first instance, he's not part of the families. So there's nothing wrong with the president going to visit a king that is recognized at that particular time, even if it's under a court process. There's nothing wrong with that. What becomes problematic is when that is accompanied by an involvement in court. Also, when you have two sides...
So are you then saying that they shouldn't be party to this court case?
I think what they should have done is that they should have approached the court as a third party, simply on the...
As a friend of the court?
As a friend of the court.
To help the court?
Yeah, okay. And therefore explain that these are the considerations that we made, rather that informed our decision. That's what they should have done, instead of being... The second thing also is that I think when you go... We are all aware that there's a contestation. So here's the king, and we know that this position is contested. So I think that the president needs to figure out how he is going to navigate this very sensitive. One way could have been visiting King Mphephu Ramabulana as a recognized king, but also going to visit or making an acknowledgement of the fact that there is a Princess Mphephu. And trying, some of that conversation has got to go obviously behind closed doors, where the president says to King Mphephu Ramabulana, listen, I can't just come and visit you. I have to visit the other person. So I think political office has been... I think political office has been insensitive and very clumsy.
Advocate Madao, just quickly in closing, have you received any responses yet from King Mphephu, is it?
Aldrin, we have not received anything or any communication, and looking at how things had unfolded from the start, we're not expecting that. But if that comes, if there's any overture approaching us, I think Masindi will be very much happy to attend to that. And
if there's an appeal, would you challenge that appeal?
Most definitely, most definitely. She's steadfast, as I indicated, that she wants to see this thing going to its logical end. Because there are a lot of things that are being said about Masindi, but she's saying she wants the court to address these issues because they've never been dealt with properly. Aldrin, I just wanted to say, Masindi wants to say to the people that she's very happy for the support that they're giving every corner of all the VhaVenda people and even those who are outside the party. And further wants to say to them, Masindi is a 27-year-old young lady who does not have a child. I want to put it that across because there's been an agenda that is being perpetuated that Masindi has got children with someone and she was a royal house. She doesn't have a child. She doesn't have a child.
Okay, then thank you so much. Nomboni Sokas as well as Advocate Madao, thank you so much for making time for us. After the break, is it true that the demand for accountability is sparking the unrest that has led to the fall of statesmen? The chairwoman of the ANC Subcommittee on International Relations, Lindiwe Zulu, joins us after the break.